Hello and welcome to another episode on the Cultivita channel. Today we are going to continue on this new path and be talking with just prompts. So it's going to be a roughly 30-minute episode in which we're going to be talking about today the gamification of life. Now you might be asking yourself, Carlos, what does coaching or financial planning or anything of the sense have to do with gaming? And just you wait, because they're actually all connected. And I think the biggest one for me is this idea that with investment you can have this freedom that we've talked about a lot, but this freedom allows you to then, I believe, live life how you want to live it. And I think one of the most rewarding ways of doing that is actually this gamification. And for me, it's about playing the game you want to play, right? If you like shooter games, then you play shooter games. If you like strategy based games, then you play strategy based games. You like deck building games, you do deck building games. I think a lot of times that when you need to go to work and you need to pay those bills, you don't get to choose. Like if the game is Monopoly, you're gonna play it, right? Because you got to win to provide, right? And I think that with financial freedom, you get to choose your game. And I think that not enough people realize that. One, to motivate them, but two, to then play the game. Because I think that when you do get financial freedom, um, whatever that means to you, we keep playing the same game that everyone else is playing, right? And we don't need to play that game anymore. And I think for me, it's really eye opening, because for me, assuming I got my needs covered, I don't need to compare my bank account to someone else's. Like, I'm not losing any sleep over my lack of yachts or private planes. Like that, I just don't care about that. But for me, family's important, right? Giving back is important. All those different things, and I want people to grade me on those things. I don't really care if someone says you fail on the yacht, level, or you fail in reference to some other thing of that sort that is monetary. That I don't really, see anything. But I think that we get stuck, kind of like when we talked about the whole, scarcity mentality. We get stuck continuing thinking about it even when we get out of it. And I think it's the same thing. We keep playing this game that other people, that the world put in front of us. When we make it, you don't need to be playing that game anymore. And I think that in some ways, when you don't play the game, even when you're in it and you play different, it gives you huge advantage. So even if you don't have the privilege of being in a place where financially you feel safe, which is really what I define as financial freedom, that you can still go through a game, and once you know the rules, you can be like, actually, I'm going to play it this way, and it doesn't say in the rule book that you can't play it that way. So for me, that's like a level of gamification of life. What about for you? I know you've mentioned this in the past in reference to like how you gamify investment.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the things that allowed me to be as successful as I have been with investments because, I'm a big board game fan and I love strategy. And, maybe the first time you play a game, you don't have the strategy ironed out and you're just kind of learning and everything like that. But maybe the second or the third time, now you're starting to get the strategy down and you're like, okay, this is how I'm going to approach this game. Well, I think the same is true in the game of life, and the thing about it is I haven't actually heard a lot of people, use that analogy before, but I think it's actually spot on. And, for someone as competitive as I am and loves the strategy of board games, I use that same mindset and I apply it to the game of life, not only the financial aspect, but other aspects as well. Um, but,
Are you
you,
winning?
yeah, man. That's the goal, right? To
Yeah,
win.
yeah.
And I want to play different games as well.
What do you mean by that?
Like the investment one is strategy based, and maybe I'm playing a Monopoly type of game, and as it relates to that as well to some extent. So I mean, I
What do
don't.
you mean? What do you mean by monopoly? One's investments are very clear.
Well,
What's the monopoly game? What are you playing at the monopoly game?
maybe how I approach a certain investment. Like for example, in Monopoly, the way that I play it is I want to try to get as many properties as possible.
That's the smart way of
Right?
playing it. Yeah.
That's the way you win. It's
Yeah.
strategy. And so I use that same mindset as I approach my investments, like, okay, well, how do I build my portfolio to make it the most advantageous to me? And for me, it's been just low cost index funds, and I think actually, the more data that comes out, it becomes more clear that that's really the direction to go. I want to be also clear that this is not financial advice, and any investment advice, go talk to a professional.
Yeah, no, one of the things as a coach that I've talked to different coachees about is they get upset because, well, two things. One is, I don't know about you, but you maybe played a game and you see somebody with this armor that looks really cool and you want it, right? So you go try to get it and you die. Why? Because you're not ready for that level, right? Like, you can't just go get that armor. That armor is like
Like someone's been
mid-game,
playing for like a
right?
while,
Yeah,
and you're like they've
exactly.
already like got this advanced armor, and now
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And you see that where people are like, oh, I want that. And you're like, you didn't see all the hours that
Oh
other
my
person
gosh,
played in,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so for me, that's one aspect that I tend to bring up probably too much in reference to,
No, but
I
it's
know you
super
want that,
important.
but just remember that you got to start from the bottom and
Yeah.
work your way up and get there. And there's something to be said. Some people are really good naturally and they can jump levels, right? But most people, no matter how good, like Michael Jordan, right? No matter how good talents you still got to put in the time. And I think that in a game, there's no better example because you like remember in Super Mario's where you could skip to a level at the end, but it was the boss, and
Like a
typically,
cheat code.
yeah, well, not a cheat code. You could find a special place in the level, and it
Oh
sent you
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
To
Like a
Bowser
was it like a
World.
warp or something?
Yeah, it was like a little star that
Yeah.
spun, and then you go there. But if you never played the game and you go into the Bowser World, you just die because you don't know what you're doing, right? It's kind of the same thing um, with life in reference to how we go about it. That it might seem great to have a bazooka, but if you don't know how to use a bazooka, it's kind of useless, or you're going to blow yourself up. So either is bad. And the other point is, I think so many times we get really, really good at the sword, right? We get so good at the sword, right? And then we have an opportunity in the game to like use, I don't know, a long sword, right? And you need the longsword because there's more enemies now, right? You're doing more melee, let's say, right? Which means there's more people around for people who aren't gaming. But the thing is, all of a sudden you get the longsword, right? Which is a two-hand sword, and you don't have your shield anymore, and you're like, oh no, I'm getting wiped out because you don't know how to defend with it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times in life, people are like, but I am an expert at the sword. And I'm like, yeah, but remember we talked about this. Life kind of puts you where your level should be. And you realize, yeah, you're really good at the sword and the shield, but right now you got to work on being a longsword because you're in an environment where there's a ton
Because you're
of.
never going to beat the level you're on using that sword. You need to understand how to
Exactly.
use the
You
other
need to
sword.
work your way up. It's like the armor thing. Like, sometimes you need armor that lets you move around. Sometimes you need heavy armor. But if you never dealt with heavy armor and you're in a place where you need it because you're just getting bombarded all the time, you need to figure out and change your strategy. Maybe move a little slower, do all these different things. And so that's kind of how life is, right? That you'll get really good and it's extremely frustrating. You're like, but I'm really good at the longsword. Why can this game be the
Hmm.
longsword? And in some ways, it's a blessing because if it was a longsword, you get bored. And there's not more room for you to grow with that sword anymore. So the longsword is where you should be, where it's hard. And if you wouldn't have mastered this regular sword, you wouldn't even be able to carry the longsword, right? Because it's a two-handed sword.
So basically, you have to be adaptable in life.
Well, not just that. I think that the moral there is that you have to be present and trust that, well, two parts. One is be present so that you're enjoying that, right? And not just like, I think we think that we only enjoy easy, but in reality we don't. If you think about when life is really easy, the enjoyment's very short. Then we get bored, right? And I think that whether you like it or not, whether it's a world, whether it's you, we're kind of like seeking out this more complexity, harder. And I joke a lot that if you have two paths, the harder path tends to be the right path because you're gonna grow. Now, assuming you're in a hurry or something else, but like in general, the harder path is the path to take, and it goes along the same notion that it's because that's where you're going to grow. That's where you're going to be a better player. But that's actually where you're going to have the most fun, right? And I think that we miss sight of that because we're always looking to tomorrow.
Yeah.
When in reality today, like if you finish the game, that's your whole point, right? But then you're done, and then you're kind of sad. The real, the best part of the game is while you're playing it. It's in that moment. It's the same thing with life. And I think that so many times we're like, oh, why couldn't it have been the last level was easy? Or why can't I just get to the end where I've mastered this weapon already? And we forget that in the moment is actually where you love the game. It's where we love our lives and where we grow and where, all the meat is at, I guess, to put it metaphorically.
Your first point about a lot of times you don't see all the hard work that goes into it, right? And I think my kids are a great example of that. Me and my wife were very diligent about investing for a number of years, and we sacrificed, trips. That's not to say we didn't still have fun. We exchanged trips for board night, board games at the house, or, a pizza party, hanging out with friends or whatever the case may be, or just going to play tennis or basketball or whatever we chose to do. So we still had fun, but I mean, there were a lot of sacrifices that were made there, and now the kids are fortunate enough to, we take a trip maybe every month or two, and for a weekend, and and they, they're spoiled to an extent. We try to not over spoil them. But
How do you
just
do that? How do you try not to over spoil them?
How
I'm
do
curious.
I-
No, seriously, I'm curious because
Well, I want them to feel, a little bit of, I want them to understand what sacrifice is, so maybe they're like, hey, can I have that? And, telling them no, even though it's something that you, in all honesty, want to get them.
But how do you, it reminds me of what Charlie Munger said in reference to, I forgot how it goes, but in reference to your wealth, it's like if you give your children your wealth, you will ruin them. And if
Yeah.
you don't give your children your wealth, they will hate you forever. So you're screwed if you do, you're screwed if you don't. And so
I
it's
think
like
that's
this tightrope you got to walk on because you can't do one extreme and you can't do the other extreme. So you kind of have to kind of go in the middle, I think is where it's going. And so for me, it's, I don't like saying. I try to encourage my child to ask questions, and when they ask questions, if I don't have a good reason for the no, it's not good enough, right? And so for me, I struggle with that to say no because I need to find a reason, and it's hard to
No,
find a reason.
I don't think you necessarily need to have a reason. I think
Really?
I don't know. I think the reason is you're trying to build a warrior.
So you tell them because you should be a warrior. Like
No,
when,
no, no, I
when,
don't tell
when he
them
says,
they're-
"Daddy, can I have some
Hey,
ice cream?"
listen,
I mean,
listen,
they're
the
older, but
world
and then they
is-
say no because the world is harsh.
The world is harsh.
But that's really happened. So if your girl comes like, Papa, can I have an ice cream? And you're like, no. And they say, why? And you say, the world is harsh. That's really what happened. I don't know. I'm asking. Like, is that really what happened? Because but 2 parts. I don't have the power to do that, and 2, I like to live by example. And if my child does something and I ask them, why in the heck did you just do that? And they just say, because the world is unfair. Oh, I'm losing my shit, right? So like, I don't want them to do that to me, and so I struggle with doing it to them, and so I don't do it, right? So like, but what do they say when you say that? I mean, do you do that? And 1 and 2, if you do,
Okay,
what
here's
do
a
they
good
say?
example. Here's a good example, right? Is my daughter plays soccer,
Uh-huh.
and she wanted some new cleats,
Uh-huh.
and I could have easily gone and bought them. In our household, they receive money for like birthdays and Christmas and stuff like that from me and other family members, and I tell them it's a 1-for-1 match. Every dollar they invest, I'll match that for $1. And so my daughter received a decent amount of money from my uncle, and she didn't want to invest it. My other daughter invested all of it, so she got a good sum invested, whereas the other daughter, she just wanted to have the cash. It's like, all right. So she's like, Dad, I want some
Prodigal's
new.
daughter.
Dad, I want some new shoes. Okay, cool. I'll take you there, and you can buy it with your money. And so she said, okay. So she went there and bought it with her own money, and then I talked to my wife about it. I was like, I want to take that money and I want to invest it for her. the money that she spent on the shoes. Like, I can buy the shoes for her; it's not a problem. But I want to actually take that and do something that she should have done to begin with. And I know that's still giving them something, but I think I wanted to see if she would actually use her own money on it. And, she did. So I was like, okay, well, I mean, it must have been important to you. So, whereas sometimes, I'll say that same thing, you got to buy it with your own money. She's like, never mind. So at least it's starting that thinking, of like,
Wait, but here's a question. Did you do that with your other daughter? Like, 'cause if she has all her money invested and she wants to buy whatever for whatever sport she does, are you going to be like, okay, you got to use your own money? And she's like, oh shit, I don't got any money. Like, right? Like, what?
no, that's a good point.
Because that's the thing. Like, for me, and again, I really think that I really feel that is right for me because it's hard. Like, because you have to justify it with every kid, and I have to justify it to myself, and then I ask myself, if they did it to me, would it be justifiable? And so, like, a lot of and I know your children shouldn't have to do the same thing as a parent. It doesn't make any sense, but that's my like my test, right? Is it good for me? And yeah, do you do that with your daughter? Would be my question.
I mean, to be fair though, my kids really don't ask for very much. But it
You
would
didn't
be
answer the
difficult.
question.
Running for office soon.
Oh, okay.
No, but
Just in case your daughter watches this, she's like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
gotta ask for anything because I invested it all. I'm gonna ask for."
no, I mean, what am I supposed to say? Like, you're gonna use your own money when I know she has none. So, no, I mean, I don't. But I guess I'm just trying to highlight with my other daughter, like, you should be investing instead of spending this money.
Oh, really? See, I see. I really thought you were doing a disservice to your other daughter because in my mind, I'm like, this thing that we do. We go out there and we buy crap and we buy more stuff and we buy more stuff, and then and this has been shown in studies that the pleasure fades. So you have to buy more and more things. But memories, different things like that, those last, right? And I thought you were trying to teach her because I try to do this with my kid too, the pain, right? In reference to like your hard-earned money now needs to go to something you need, right? And that's a good lesson
Well,
to
yeah,
learn,
it's both.
right?
It's
and,
both.
And I think, no, yeah, what I'm saying, that's a great lesson
Yeah.
to be like, you should feel what it is to pay with your own money for something. And I think it's really important. And I was just like, that's really unfair to the other daughter that she invested it all, and then you don't go to her and she gets to learn that lesson. I didn't really look at it in reference to like you trying to teach the daughter that didn't invest to invest. I was looking at it like, oh, now you got this really cool opportunity to teach this one daughter about spending, right? Which I see great, but then I'm like, that's really unfair to the other daughter, right? Because what you should do, at least in my opinion, is then be like, well, you didn't have any money available, right? Like you should probably have some money for like a rainy day. And now that's opportunity to be like, and then when you need something, you have a little bit. But the great thing, you can take money out of investment, right? And like you can teach the balancing thing. And that for me was I thought where we were going with it. But like,
Well, you can't really take it out of a UTMA, but
but my point is
Yeah, I
in
know what you're
reference to
saying.
like trying to teach them that the balance that like imagine if we had all our money in investments that were locked in, like a Roth account,
Mhm.
right?
well,
How
actually,
would-
Roth's not only locked in because you can take out, your contributions. But yeah,
Okay, fine.
a
Like,
401k.
yeah,
Although you can take it out then too, but there's penalties.
exactly. But that's my point. Like, you take it out, there's penalties, right? I think that's what
Yeah.
you're saying. Like, you can't take it out because there's penalties. But my point being, though, is you shouldn't put it all away. You should try to think in the future. Hey, I'm gonna need cleats for the new season. Let me put a little bit on the side. Now you're teaching planning, budgeting, right? And you're showing them like, man, those cleats are expensive. And I worked hard for that money. Like with my kid, what we do is I'm trying to encourage them to see value because that's what we pay for, right? When you provide value to someone, they pay for it. And so what I tell them is I break it down through work, mechanics. Someone goes to work, they get money, and then they go do the things they want to do with it, and like their job, right? And for them, their job is to go to school and learn. And one of the best ways to learn is by reading. And so for every book they read, I give them a certain amount of money. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense because my job is to learn, right? So for every book I've learned more, I get more money, right? that is very quantifiable for me. It makes logical sense. And then they go and then they really want, they really like barbecue pork, and they go and they're like, I want barbecue pork. And oh no, actually, the great example is they did picture day, and they had seen the previous year they get this little water bottle with their faces all on them, and they thought this was the coolest thing ever, and they really wanted a water bottle. And we're like, no, we're not going to buy you. You have a water bottle, right? We provide you with what's necessary. This is extra. I was like, you can go and do it on your own if you want, but we're not going to buy it for you. And they're like, oh, so much money. And what they realized, though, they're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. They didn't even have enough. They had to take a loan out, right? And unfortunately, this one,
What interest rate do you charge?
No interest rate. But unfortunately, what I realized was,
can I get a loan?
What I don't like about this lesson is it kind of demotivated them to read. I realized, because they were in debt, and I kind of like, but it's a good lesson, right? Because think about it: if every penny you make, right, most of it goes to a loan you have, it's kind of demotivating to be like, why am I going to make more pennies? And I don't know if they can really internalize it, but that's where they were. And I was like, I can see why it's so much harder
because
to be
they knew
poor.
they weren't actually going to get the money.
Exactly. Right. When
like,
you're
well,
poor, it's just, life is just harder all around. And that's one of the elements where, you don't even get the fruits of your own labor.
So do you think that among the like wealthy, middle income and like poor, do you think they're playing different games? And if yes,
yeah,
what would be a good comparison to like the rich game that they're playing? Like, give me a board game, like in middle class, and then some, poor. What kind of?
Well, I would say the I think when you're poor, you're playing the game of like.
Is it like war?
No, I think it's more like what's
it's got to be like a completely random, like there's like you're not employing like a strategy necessarily. It's just got to be like a coin flip almost.
Well, I was gonna say it reminds me of the game. I forgot Outbreak. What is it called? Where you're on the same team? No, you're on the same team.
Okay, lay it on me. Go ahead.
You're on the same team, and there's a virus that's broken out.
Yeah.
You can be a doctor, a scientist, and you're trying to go. The thing is, it's random. Every turn, you flip over cards, and the virus takes over another country, does something else. It morphs. It breaks. It becomes more contagious. Different things, right? So that's really luck. You don't know. You get born into a situation.
There's skill in that, though, Carlos. I mean, I'm not saying it's like a super strategy game, but I would say that would be more applicable to like a middle income.
No, but I was gonna say, but you're playing this game on ultra extreme, because I don't know if you know this, but you can go and play the game on easy, medium, and hard.
Yeah.
And on hard, it's
there's
crazy.
There's more viruses, right, or something.
There's more viruses, and there's more cards, and there's worse cards,
Yeah.
and it's harder for you to get cures for them.
Okay,
right?
so you're saying it's playing it on like hard.
On like the hardest you could play it, right? Without ever playing it before.
Okay, I'll give you that. But now tell me what the middle is.
But the reason why is I think thematically it resonates, because you're just trying to survive. The world's about to get annihilated, and there's really nothing else you can focus on than just
survival. Okay,
so many times when I'm
no,
playing
that's
that
good.
game,
That's good. I like that.
I get so caught up in just containing the virus, when in reality I'm like, oh, but the end game is actually to cure it.
Yeah.
And you get so caught up in the game where you're trying to do all these little things that you lose. Right? Because the game's really, really hard, and when you play it on hard, it's almost impossible to win.
Okay.
So that for me would be the poor. For the medium,
that's actually pretty good. I'll give you that.
That's why I picked it, because I think thematically
it
really resonates. For the medium, that's tougher. I think the medium is a game where I would say right now, I would say it's kind of like, it reminds me of Scythe. Have you ever played Scythe?
Scythe? No.
Yeah, it's where it's a post-apocalyptic world, and you're all trying to do these different things, but you can only you only have food, mechs, metal, and favor from the people, and the mechanics are relatively good. You need strategy. It's a great game. It's just so good, right? But I think that, and I think the expansion is going to solve this problem I'm going to talk about. It's limiting, right? Because you're focused. It's kind of like worker placement, like with Euro games. You just place, and the strategy is there. But a lot of people complain about Euro games that it's not like there's not as much combat, right? Or there's not as it's not as in depth, or it's not as complicated, and so on and so forth. And But what ends up happening? Oh, actually, here's another one. There's a game that's oh shit, I forgot what. But sometimes you get these cards at the beginning of the game that give you a mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the games, it's kind of there to kind of give you direction. But there are some games out there that if you don't do it, you'll lose. Like you need those bonus points at the end because they're that critical, right? And I think that that's kind of where I'm at with the middle class, where you got strategy, you're thinking about this stuff, you're thinking about all these different things, but you're still playing the game by someone else's rules, right?
What's
And I
that bird
think
game?
Wingspan.
Wingspan, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like Wingspan in that sense, right? Like
You have the other
you're
cards.
just
You
trying to
can-
lay eggs. You're trying to make birds. You're trying to get food, or you're trying to get cards. That's it. There's so many
And
games
now
like that.
in that game, you can start accumulating, right? Like
Yeah,
you have the ability. You're not overwhelmed by the viruses, but you're slowly starting to.
yeah. You
You
feel
may not
comfortable
win,
and
but
you're
you're like,
enjoying the
okay,
game. Yeah,
even if you're not winning, you're still moving forward a little bit,
yeah.
So okay.
But I would say, like for the rich, it's a game where there's certain games that kind of reminds me like games that take days to play, where the strategy is so vast and every move is you're not thinking about the next turn, you're thinking about 20, 30, 50 moves ahead.
Yeah.
And these games, they have lots of rules, but they're all general. Like the amount of power you have it kind of reminds you like a video game. Remember when Zelda came out and for the very first time you could just travel anywhere and it just blew everybody's mind. I mean, now games just do that, right? Because
Yeah.
it was phenomenal. It was just great. Like you usually would like with any video game, you go with Zelda, you go where it's supposed to go, you solve the puzzles, and then you move on. That's middle income, right? But then all of a sudden you could go anywhere. You could there was multiple places you can go, and each one you could do whenever you wanted. There was usually an advantage to doing one or the other in different things, so it requires different things to make it easier in different places, but you could go anywhere. And that's kind of what like I think being rich is. You get to play your own game, you get to set your own rules, you get to play however you want to play, and the game is long.
I think you really said something super important there. Is that they're playing a long game, right? They're not worried about today or tomorrow or even next week, which I think a lot of the poor people are looking at today. Like, I need to feed my family today.
Yeah.
Middle class is like, this budget this month, whereas the people that are wealthy are like, okay, this year, this next 5 years, this next 15 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the mindset that I adopted when I started my journey.
In summary, I think that for the when you're poor, you're playing a game on the hardest fucking level,
Yeah.
like the insane level. Sometimes they make games and you're like, who would play it on insane? That's what you're playing, because
But
it's a game where you're
here's one
just
thing.
focusing on surviving. And I
But,
think that the medium term is a game where you know the rules, you're using strategy and it feels good and you feel comfortable. But I think that and now you're medium term. You're thinking about where the medium like where do you want to be in the middle of the game and how you want to finish, what strategies you're using to get the most points. You kind of like Wingspan, where you have the mechanics of like, oh, I have this engine going, right? I'm gonna make a lot of eggs. Like I'm just gonna be egg. I want to get birds with lots of eggs. Because I can produce a lot of eggs. There's strategy there, and I think that the long term is more of the rich, where they're playing by their own rules and they're looking at a game that's going to take days to play instead of just hours, or potentially a really short game, and the game's on easy. I think that that's the theme, where you're going from insanely hard to maybe hard or medium to easy in some degree.
So the thing
because
about
of
it
the
is
power.
is that those are the games that these different brackets are playing. But I think it's very important to say that if you're in the poor bracket, that doesn't mean you can't start to play the long game. I think that's
Yeah.
really what you want to start doing, is you want to
Yeah.
start playing the long game. And even if you got to take it slower and be like, maybe, just jump to like Wingspan or something like that first before you jump into the other bracket. I mean, do that, but start making progress towards, long-term objectives.
I mean, it really depends on everybody, right? Because if you're, I mean, it's probably not people listening to us, but I think there's a lot of people out there that when you're poor, I mean, I grew up very poor, and you don't have the luxury at all to have a penny a minute towards the medium. You just don't, right? You're just surviving. Um, and
There's not things you could do though in order. So like for example,
it depends.
I mean, I
The
think there's
I would
always something you could do. Like
I would say the majority of people, yes, but I would say there is a minority in the poor that don't. They just don't, man. You just don't get it. If you are an immigrant, if you are working with your body, if you have a family of two or three, if you have no support network, if you are working below minimum wage, I'm telling you, man, there's
yeah,
nothing. There,
yeah,
there just isn't. I mean, you can sit and do the math because I remember I tried to do that with my dad. I remember, I think I told you the story where my dad loved playing soccer. I mean, loved it. And I was super good at math and I was like doing their taxes and stuff. And I was like, oh, let me go through it. I think I can figure it out where you can get, I think it was $50 a month or something for the dude. Or actually, no, I think it was like $20, $30. And I went through it, man. There was nothing. There was nothing there. There was it was just.
there
I was
wasn't like
just floored.
a cell phone or
We
like
didn't have any of that, man.
a car. Did you have a car?
We had a used old car. Like it's a thing. Like and we needed that car because my dad needed to go to work. My
Yeah.
mom didn't work, right? My mom used to feed a family of five. I think she would get $50 a week. Um, I don't know how she did that. We were three boys and we ate so much. She was going and buying bargain like all the like clearance stuff just to be able to just meet. And then my dad was laid off for a while where we were on food stamps and stuff and we were just eating like spam. Like there's just no room. And it's not that my dad wasn't trying to get a job. It was just a really bad time.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you there are. But I would always say that there are instances where you got to put your head down and you got to work hard. But I think that what you should be doing is working hard, but keep your head up because there's opportunities. And I think that right now it might be pitch black, but it doesn't mean that tomorrow doesn't have a glimmer of light that you can go and do what you were saying. But I do think that there are instances when you're poor that there is no light. And that doesn't mean that you just give up. It means that you knuckle down and you work hard and you look towards tomorrow because tomorrow there might be that thing. And that's why I think the majority of people that are in that bracket have opportunities. It's hard because they
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
stay up late
Much harder.
after
Much
working,
harder.
three jobs. They're going to stay up late and try to do a side hustle. They have to do all these things super hard. But I will say that I think it would be dishonest for me to say that I don't know for certain that there are instances in their lives where there really is no space for opportunity. And it sucks because they didn't choose to be there. They were born
Yeah.
into it. But I will say that just because there's no opportunity today doesn't mean there's no opportunity later because I truly believe that that opportunity is there. It's just you might have to wait. And sometimes, that means you look forward, right? You're looking up because you look forward and you're like, hey, right now I have to wait for, I don't know, I have to wait for the next thing. And sometimes, I would say that there's certain times in life, and it happens with partners, happens with work, that like we talked about, we want that other armor, we want that good stuff. And what we have to stop and realize is we're not good enough to get that armor. We're not good enough for that partner, right? I think that so many times that I wanted a certain level of partner and I wasn't getting it in the beginning. And I think now in retrospect, I was so analytical. I always want to get better and better and better. But I like to say that I knew all this, but in reality I didn't. I just liked gaming my life like that. But what I did was actually super smart because I became better and the person I wanted, like the person I wanted was up here and I was down here and I was just having fun, enjoying myself because I liked challenging myself and getting better. And what I realized was now when I'm older is what I should have done is been actively, working on me getting to that level because I wasn't there. Same thing with like the armor. I can't hold that armor because I'm not strong enough. It's the same thing with the job. If I want this much pay, I'm not valuable enough to demand that much pay. And so I would say there's certain things that you can do along the way. Maybe at work you listen, right? You pay attention to things where you can add value. And then when you see, hey, I can add value here, you ask to be compensated for it. Actually, I think you could do this and this. And sometimes you have to give it for free, but then they realize, hey, Matt's really smart. Let's get him for the next thing. But they would never have ever looked at you, ever. So that's why it's like you have to put your head down, work hard, get really good at that, and then the opportunity comes up. But you can't just keep your head down. You have to keep looking up because those things come up, and you're like, oh, actually, I am here. Or you realize, I'm at that level. I can get the armor now, right? And so now you get to enjoy that. And I think like that it lends itself very nicely with the metaphor of gaming, but that's where we're at, that sometimes with the poor, yeah, you're playing the game on insanely hard and that you can only focus on what's in front of you, but look up and have hope because you don't want an opportunity to pass you. They're seldom and they're few and they're going to be really hard, but you can do it. Like I hated school. I still hate school. Like just because I was able to be good at it didn't mean I loved it, right? Let's just be honest. But I saw it as what it was, and I knew it was my ticket out, and that's why I focused on it, right? But I could have easily just not, right? And that's the choice we got. We always get that choice that you can stay where you are, and most people like that because they know the pain that they know. But when you go somewhere else, you might get worse pain. But more likely than not, it gets better, and that's hard. That's hard to believe in yourself. It's hard to have hope when everything looks bleak. So that's the game of life, I think, in so many ways is rigged against you when you're poor. And I think the problem is not, like you said, it's not that the opportunity isn't there. It's that when the opportunity doesn't present itself, it breaks people. Because every day you're out there and you're doing it and you're doing it and you're doing it and you're like, there's no hope. And so you just keep your head down. You never look up. And I think that you need to be able to look up. And I think that you're right, the opportunity is there. And I think people, when I hear people talk about it, people are upset. They're like, oh, they got opportunity. Why aren't they working hard? Why are they doing that stuff? And you're just like, because they have no hope. They completely lost it. Like, imagine somebody, you get up and they just beat you down. They get up and you beat down. You get, and you're just like, and you're like, oh, but look, they left the door open. They're not looking up anymore. They're just looking down. It's just been too hard. And I think that's the hard part. It's not that the opportunity is not there. It's that during the hardest of times, they lose hope. They're not looking up anymore. And so, yeah, I would say that frustration that people talk about when they talk about poor classes of not bootstrapping or not working hard, I think it's a lack of belief and hope in themselves. And we, as a society, fail them, really, because, and I think that's the one thing that the U.S. does really well. And I've actually poked fun at this notion, but I think that this whole American dream is very, very powerful, and it's why so many people still want to go to the U.S. Because it's hope. It's hope that if you work hard, you're going to make it. Even though statistically it's very, very difficult, that hope keeps you looking up and keeps you playing and keeps you looking for those opportunities. And when you find it, then you get to the middle class. And then unfortunately you're pissed because the middle class is just as hard in different ways. Now you got strategy, now you have some resources, but you realize, the game is rigged as well in a different way. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think when people come to America, the people like the type of people that come there looking to make their lives better are already motivated to try to get out of that situation. And fortunately enough, like you said, America is one of those places where you can actually, if you put the work in and you have a good idea and you're a good product, I mean, you can change your situation.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that for all the things I just talked about being poor, the inverse is true for being rich. You have so much time to think. It's like, I don't know if you ever played like chess with like the timer. I mean, I'm not good at chess, but when I play the timer, it just throws me off, right? Because you're like, my wife takes a long time to play board games, and so we tried getting one of those timers and timing ourselves, and we're like, okay, this game says it's supposed to take an hour, right? We're going to put an hour. We're experienced with this game. We played a lot. We should be able to do that in an hour. We're each going to get 30 minutes, right? And then for our turns, and we go and, It's different when you're timed, when you got urgency, and this is what happens, right? It's important versus urgency. So many times we do what's urgent and we forget what's important because we don't have time to focus on it. When you are rich, you have time and you got to focus on the important thing. It looks like you're smart. You just have more time to actually go that way.
I would say wealthy rather than rich, because
Okay,
rich
fine,
is an
wealthy.
illusion and to an
That's
extent in
okay.
my.
And you can argue that middle class is now the new rich. But yeah, you're right. Like wealthy people, I think, have this belief in themselves. Think about that, right? They go out there. I believe that they go out there. They see a game. They're like, no, I'm not playing that. Like imagine, right? Like the poor just are like, you're screwed, right? And in the middle income, it's like, okay, this is the game. I'm gonna win it. And then the poor's like, nope, I'm not playing that. Why? Because it's rigged, right? But that takes a lot of gold. That I mean, come on, to your whole life, everywhere that says this is the game of life, and you say, I'm gonna play my own game. And you see that with wealthy, you become so much more confident. You become so much, I guess, wise, but it's because you get time. You get to think. So many times I tell my kids, stop and think. We're all intelligent, logical beings, and we can make good decisions. It's because we panic or we make rash decisions very quickly. And I think that there's an element of that in the medium, and a lot of it in with the people that when you're poor. So yeah, I think that the wealthy seem to be smarter, but I think that it's just that the wealth
I don't know
allows them
smarter. I
to
think the
be
correct thing is that they are planning for the long term. I think that's really
okay.
the
Fine, they're
core
planning
thing.
for the long term, but I think that that's a privilege. That's a luxury that you can't afford
You're
when you're
right.
poor.
You're right.
And so
But you
that's
know,
kind of how I'm putting it.
I think you also you're right in the sense that they're just trying to feed themselves that day. But that's not to say that they still should not set those goals or yeah, establish the long term strategy. Like maybe look at it like this is the first time they're playing the game. The next time they play the game, they're gonna change a little
Mm.
bit, and
But
the game's still hard, but now you understand the dynamics about it a little bit,
But I think
and
that,
you can
that
start.
resonates more with the medium term. I think that you're spot on with that because I think that when you get to the medium term, you have time and you can think about those things. Um, and in some ways, I think we get caught up in them, right? So to summarize, for me, I think it comes down to a game when you're poor that you're just playing off your needs. Whatever you need, that's food, water, shelter. That's all you're playing. That's all you focus on, right? And it's hard to look for opportunity because it's so difficult. And I think the medium term or the middle income, it's more about like, oh, okay, I see the strategy, I see like planning and everything, but we're playing by the rules that media sets for us. By our culture, our society, our religion, they're saying, "Oh, you're supposed to care about this. You're supposed to buy this. You're supposed to do this." And I see it a lot where people go and they're like, "Okay, money. I'm gonna buy all this stuff," and then they realize, "Oh, wait, I'm not happy. It doesn't work." And I think that that's the hard part of getting your mindset out of that middle income to like the wealthy. And I think the wealthy, the difference is not only like are they playing on long term and they're playing on easy, they have this time to be able to set their own rules and play their own game. And that's what I want for everybody. And that's why, I talk about, the finance and the mindset because I think that like you're right, we all can do that. We just need to find the opportunity to reach up and go up. And they're not always there, but we need to be looking. And I think the poor don't look because they have their head down. And I think the medium aren't looking because they have their head looking forward when they should be looking up for the rope. And that's because they say like the world says it's here and so we're only looking here, right? And I think the wealthy are able to just look at everywhere and be able to play the game they want to play and believe in
When they want to
themselves
play it.
and play exactly. And I think that's the difference in reference to the game of life. And you can think outside the box and just it's also the picture, right? It's really focused on needs and focus on wants and then focusing on the big picture long term and playing the way you want to play.
So basically, the takeaway is start playing board games and then apply that to your life.
Or video games. Actually, there was a lot of stuff on video games too. But that's it. Hopefully, that was fun or enjoyable or educational or something of the sort. If you want more information based on the ideas that we did talk about or just want to watch other stuff, check out the book, Selfish Guide, or check out the channel on varying social media. There's lots of stuff out there, as well as the website, cultivita.com. And anything else you wanted to add?
No.
All right, that's it for now. And until next time, stay curious, stay open, and stay true to you. Thanks for watching.